Callum, how are we doing?
Yeah, good. Thank you, Robbie. How are you?
I'm good, guys. We've got Callum with us today, our head of performance at Sentrama. Callum, why don't you tell us all about boosting sales team performance? That's the topic today, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've got some seen the agenda. It's packed with some really interesting points that we can dive into. But it's certainly a topic of conversation that I think challenges most sales and performance leaders is what you can get out of your team and maximize the talent and the resource and the processes that you have. And that all builds into a whole sales team performance. Yeah, looking forward to diving deep into the detail.
Cool. I mean, it's one of those topics you could probably go on for weeks. I think we talk about it all the time, don't we? And it's critical, really, to success for Centrama. And there's performance. I think in the performance, there's lots of things that performance means, really. Performance can mean quality, it can mean quantity, it can mean everything wrapped up together. Maybe you could give us a kind of your philosophy on that, Callum, to start with, and then we can maybe dive into how it's evolved over the recent years.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you put it nicely there, Robbie. I think it's everything put in together, and I think there's so many contributors to both individual and a team performance. I think what we look to achieve in terms of performance at Sentrama, and bear in mind we're a completely sort of performance orientated product and service, is about leveraging the talent and the human talent that we have in the best way possible. And I think from my perspective, it's a really interesting dynamic from individual performance and getting the best out of an individual to then also getting the best out of a team. And I think people and leaders that achieve that in the best way are the ones that see the most success. Which is, how can you communicate, set the right standards, what is sort of non-negotiables, your controllables as a team, and what are you looking to achieve in a certain time period or long-term, short-term. But then outside of that, and once you've delivered that message, and hopefully it's been received in the way that you'd like it to be received, it's then around working on the individual and making sure that not only they can buy into that team performance piece, but they feel looked after, heard, supported on an individual perspective note, to then hit their numbers. Because fundamentally, yes, you can talk about a team, a company, a team, a sales team's performance, but actually that is just made up of every single person's individual numbers, volume piece, the quality piece that you just mentioned there. Everything that they do collectively brought into one to then be brought into a team is what important. So I think that for me is where the sort of biggest challenge lies, and actually, but also the most enjoyment, which is how can you get performance out of the team as a whole, but then also work on the individual as well. So that's sort of top of mind for me when it comes to boosting sales team performance, and obviously service and product delivery performance from our perspective as well.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because obviously people come to Centrama for multiple things, but mainly the qualified sales appointments is the product, which means you've got to make sure that the team are performing. In particular, the what we call the role of the SDR, so the senior sales development reps that we have. Obviously, they might be working across multiple industries, multiple campaigns. We tend to keep people focused in terms of specialisms, but the real thing is, I would say that role in particular and what we're seeing in the market has massively changed in the last in the last 5 years, but particularly in the last 18 months with the introduction of technology and methodology, making things more efficient. What's your thoughts on that? What have you seen happening, and kind of how do you leverage it at the moment?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think when I think joining Centrama actually opened up my eyes to what's possible in terms of equipping a sales team and a performance team with the right tools, the right processes to be then successful. I think a good sales team that performs well and performs successfully is often around efficiency and actually equipping the guys with the right data, the right sort of tech stack that you referenced there to be able to book the quality at the volume that is required. Interestingly, as much as we leverage technology and all the outbound channels that we do, I think what's quite nice over the last sort of year to 18 months, and certainly what the data has shown us, is around actually that the phone element of the outbound activity is absolutely critical. And actually, from my perspective, in terms of what I work on with the SDRs and what's there in their control, is you get all the information, you get the data, you get the opportunities that have been warmed up and engaged with over our digital channels and our digital processes, but it's still the phone that gets us over the line. So for the guys, um, it's it's still very much what I would say is probably a traditional, what I know to be a traditional um, selling approach, which is that you still need to qualify people, no matter how it gets to you. You still need to qualify them. You still need to get their sort of buying intent. You still need to understand where they are on the buying cycle. All these qualification piece, as well as engaging with them over the phone, is still what is absolutely critical to our process and actually any sales process at the moment. Which is why this whole individual and team performance is still absolutely critical, because yes, there's so much that tech and automation can do now, and it sits at the heart of what we do and makes us super efficient and be able to book the quality meetings that we go to market with and look to achieve at volume. But actually, for the guys, in terms of a performance element, it still hugely exists, and that the phone um, aspect of outbound activity, I think, remains at the sort of goal scoring end of our process, certainly, and actually any sales process, and that's what the data's showing us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I mean, from my perspective, I've noticed with the digital channels, there has been a bit of a what's the right word? Maybe a diaspora, a flood of people just hammering SaaS solutions and the email senders and LinkedIn, etc., and just doing a bad job of it, which then obviously degrades the quality of what's out there. So obviously, I know how you deploy the team. Sentrama is all around conversational pieces first, pattern disrupts, etc., and being different with the approach, which is critical to success. But I think you're right that there has been this kind of 360 in terms of the phone being the most effective method, but you have to be smart with it. You have to deploy it in the right way. You have to feed the right data, the right context, etc. As I'm seeing happening to great effect within our team. I suppose let's just sympathise with the audience a little bit in terms of the SDR in 2024. What are the challenges they're currently facing out there?
Thinking back to the day-to-day grumblings of the team, I think more and more into you are very dictated to by I guess how strong your product is and how much you understand your product. And I think for us, when we represent a variety of products that are sold into, again, all industries that you can ever imagine, really, um, it's around, for them, how quickly can you identify your angle, your USP? How can you create create an angle basically that's going to resonate with the prospect. Now, we obviously have our own frameworks that can be rolled out across all of our customers and clients that we work with. But I think the biggest challenge is that there is a saturated market in the majority of markets that exist now, especially within tech and SaaS, which is obviously where we work in currently. Majority of our customers are in. It's saturated. Not everyone has a differentiator. So if they don't necessarily have a clear differentiator, the biggest challenge that faces the SDR over the phone is how can you identify, maybe create in the prospect's mind a pain point, a challenge that they're not actually necessarily aware of, or it could be one that they're very aware of, and then aligning them to, right, this is the solution, this is how we're different, this is a bit of statistical sort of evidence behind it, social proof as we call it,
Yeah.
and then hopefully, in a way that then encourages them into taking the next step meeting with our clients. So I think in terms of challenges, I think there's product challenges that are always going to exist and actually increase over time, because more and more companies are entering each market, each industry, especially within the ones that we work in currently. So it's that competitive battle. And then, I think data and arming the sales team with the right data, with the right opportunities, that's been a challenge that's existed within SDR functions, I imagine, from the very beginning, which is you've got some really talented people over the phone, but are you equipping them with the right opportunity, the right leads, the right data to then be able to use that talent to then booking the right meetings at the right volume. So we have processes, and all of our tech stack is built around um, negating those sort of those issues, which is why obviously our process works. But I think that's certainly a challenge that probably exists within a lot of organisations at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's a historical challenge, isn't it? I mean, you can go back to like the classic films like Glengarry Glen Ross, where they're talking about the leads are no good and they're holding up bits of paper with people's contact details on, etc. I think that challenge is never changed really. It's just about knowing how to work the data, which our team are very good at, and knowing where to get the data compliantly, obviously. But then look for the sales intelligence that you can give across the team to deploy it properly and get the right angle, as you say, is quite right. I noticed part of your team in Sentrama, or our team in Sentrama, they if they're engaged with a prospect, it's often quite client focused as well. And so what I mean by that is um, a good SDR. So obviously, in our instances, we have senior SDRs, and that's what we have. We don't go for juniors and telemarketers or anything like that. And the reason, is for quality. Um, but that sort of person will have the ability to kind of sympathize with the person who's on the other end of the phone, understand where they are currently on that journey for the product that they're representing, maybe pick out some pain points, pick out some leverage, I guess, in terms of being able to qualify them or help the prospect understand they do have the problem that they didn't think they had.
Mm,
Um, and take them on that journey. And there's a lot of interpersonal skills in there, which I think are quite hard to teach, to be honest with you. Easy
yeah,
to coach.
massively.
I noticed you coach the guys through that, but it's quite hard to teach. Um, so okay, that's cool. So what about the role of outsourced SDRs, Callum? What's your view on that? Obviously, we've got a biased view here.
Yeah, we've got massively biased view. I think it's really interesting. I'm fortunate enough to look after our service delivery right from onboarding a client to then delivering for a client. So I work with our campaign managers from the very beginning, and actually obviously speaking to yourself and obviously others that sell the service as well, is understanding from that client how they see their product, they see the USP, they see their um, ideal customer profile. So far, I mean, we work with organisations right from the very beginning, and they might be 1, 2, 3 person organisations. They could be billion-dollar organisations, but actually these organisations face the same challenge, which is they're not generating enough opportunity from their internal teams, or they don't have an internal team. So I think it's always interesting to understand initially what they do, how they go about it, what they see their unique selling point as, what they see their angle as, what they see their position in the market as, for example, and who they can sell to, and organizations, industries, everything that builds up an ideal customer profile. For then us to sort of go away, conduct our own market research at the beginning of the partnership in the form of what we call an SDR sprint, which is sort of high volume calling activity to understand if we're going in the right direction, um, to then giving that feedback and then having this sort of conversation back and forth around whether we're doing it in the right way. And I think that's a massive bonus of outsourcing this sort of activity, because you're discovering key information that could really change and dictate the direction of your business, because you're using a different framework and you're speaking to different people that are going out there and more often than not having more conversations than your team are currently. And if you don't have a team, they're certainly having more conversations because no conversations are taking place. So I think that's, for me, what was really exciting when I joined Sentrama, and actually understanding the sort of outbound agency and sales agency sort of approach, which is you've got basically two really different teams that are going to be managed differently, sit within a different environment, have a different framework. And yes, yours might be successful, it might be unsuccessful, but we're confident that the way that we operate and our processes and our team operate is going to be even more successful, or at least be equally successful using a different approach, which is just as valuable. So I think that for me is the real bonus of it, outside of the sort of the standard selling points that we have with our service.
Of course, yeah. I mean, with outsourcing, I say this with caution because there's a lot of bad examples of outsourcing
Mm,
out there. I think it's no secret that there is a lot of fingers burnt when it comes to outsourcing, and finding the right partner is critical, because there's a lot of chances, for want of a better phrase,
yeah,
out in the market. But I think you're right. Is when you find a partner like Sentrama, and there are others out there that are performance focused. Yeah, so in our
mm,
instance, qualified sales appointments that are booked to the criteria. Yeah, let's agree with the client. Obviously, kind of the team's neck is on the line for that performance, right? We have to perform as an outsourced partner. Yeah, otherwise we will no longer be an outsourced partner.
yeah,
So it's a very different mentality to somebody who might have just got the job internally. Might take to have the luxury of 2 or 3 months of learning the role, have the luxury of all the HR protection that they get as well, quite rightly, in terms of employment
yeah,
luxury. Um, and then, it's slightly less cutthroat's what it is. It's the wrong thing to say, but obviously, when you bring somebody internally, it often takes a lot longer and is a lot harder to manage them, isn't it? Versus, if you get a very good outsourced partner, they can deliver results quickly.
yeah. I think it is interesting as well. It goes back to sort of a high level point of this discussion today, which is, sales team performance and actually building something up from scratch. It's really challenging. You need the right leadership in place. You need the right, obviously, then people who start and begin with the team, the right influences that then go down the line that are going to carry the message. You would have experienced, Rob, through your career, and I certainly have, through my career, both obviously at Sentrama and previous to this. It's it takes time. It really does take time to create an environment and a culture that breeds success and that someone can come up into and immediately succeed. And if you don't have that, you set people up for failure. So um, I think, again, as you rightfully said there, by almost outsourcing it, we've got a team in place, we've got an environment in place, we've got a culture in place, we've got a process in place, we've got training in place, leadership in place. Everything is ready to go, and you don't have to go through what, in my experience, and people that we've spoken to and clients that we hold have gone through sometimes year plus. SDR functions have come and gone. They seem to come in with the different sort of VP of sales that enter these organizations. Some like them, some don't. But the reason for that is because actually it takes time, energy, resource, money to really build out one that is consistently effective and performs well. So I think, on that point, and I know you were saying this, but it links back to the team performance aspect of what we're talking about, which is it's a really difficult thing to achieve. It takes time, and you need the right people leading it to then get the success and the performance from it at the other end.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that segues quite nicely onto what I was going to ask you next, and that's around building a high performance sales culture, which is exactly what you're suggesting there. It does
Yeah,
take um, kind of what practical steps are there? Like, let's just assume somebody's new to this. I mean, the obvious answer is come and speak to us and Centrama, but let's say they want to
yeah,
try
yeah, yeah.
and
Yeah,
where we
I
start.
think, yeah. Well, interestingly, I don't. I think until you've experienced it or you've seen it, I think it's quite a difficult thing to articulate sometimes. I know me and you, Rob, spoken a lot about. We've got obviously got a big interest in sport, and actually, that's probably where a lot of our mentality towards performance comes from. And that's certainly the case for me. I think where I've seen successful teams, and you read about successful teams as well, is really honing in and focusing on the sort of controllable aspects of performance, and setting a really clear standard with the team. And it needs to be, yes, it needs to be an achievable standard, but it can be high, and almost not, very much identifying what parts of the role, what parts of team performance are non-negotiable, and going, this is the standard that we're going to set ourselves to. And because it's solely in our control, there's no excuse as to why we can't hit them. So you take out all of, yes, there's targets in place, and you need to book X amount of meetings a day, or the quality of meeting that comes in. But actually, before that, in terms of an attitude, behaviours piece, and the controllables that I just referenced, what is it that you're going to hold the team to? Because if you can hold that level of professionalism, then it just feeds then through the team. And I think that the behaviours piece is actually what makes a successful and a high performance culture. And again, this is treading on the toes of the high performance podcast, but that's again what everyone talks about at the beginning of that. When you read into successful sports organizations or business organizations, I think the very best are good at making it really clear and communicating it effectively. What are the non-negotiables within this team? And if you don't hit them, you won't necessarily go on the journey with us, but they'll be achievable and they'll motivate people in the right way, both as a team and individually.
Yeah.
I think that's my big piece, because outside of that, people get to performance KPIs at different speeds. And actually, I think as long as you're on the right track, a lot of the time, there's always a time element of it, but like as long as you're on the right track, then you can, and you're living up to the standards that we've set out from the beginning, then that's absolutely acceptable, because some people do pick things up at a different pace to others, or don't necessarily have as much luck or pickup or conversation rate as others at the beginning. But if they're doing the right behaviors, they're doing the controllables really well. And Robbie, you've spoken a lot to the Sentrama team about the 1%ers. Like, I couldn't agree more with that. I think do little things each day that can make you better from a behavioural and an attitude perspective and a controllable perspective, and then that will actually lead to the right individual and team performance in terms of numbers at the end of it.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a lot to be said in that. Can I improve myself by 1% every single
Yeah,
day? I know it's quite a romantic thing to say, but it's true, right? 1% compounds over time, so and quite quickly. So yeah, and we see that from our team. I think there's a lot of active learning, a lot of active listening going on around, and learning from each other and sharing that in the culture, which is good and critical. And I think that's a credit to the outsourcing model. Actually, is that we're all in the same boat in Sentrama. We're there for the success of Sentrama and our clients, rather than being there for the success of our own careers, so to speak. Which makes it's a slightly different dynamic to an internal team as well, because that can be a bit of a rat race sometimes to kind of please the
yeah,
boss.
so
So okay, cool. And then data-driven performance. You've touched on this a little bit. How does that influence the team and kind of building a high-performance sales team?
I think it's I've mentioned the reference there around the message and the way you communicate with your team, but actually it holds very little credibility if there's no data behind what you're saying.
Yeah.
So I think with the team, the two things: people like succeeding on paper. They like being able to see that they're succeeding. They like to be able to see their activity levels, or we talk around gamifying our process and our team a little bit to make it more enjoyable. But that all comes off the back of data. So it's obviously as well an absolute key indicator around, are we doing the right things to give ourselves the best chance of being successful? And as is the case with any performance team, whether it's in business, corporate sales, sport, whatever it might be, you are going to have dips in form, dips in performance, high level, top line dips of performance. And what you can fall back on to give you confidence that you're doing the right things is the data behind your activity in your day to day. I always use it, or used to say around it being your insurance policy, because if you're doing the right things at the start of the day and to create the opportunities, and it's worked for you 3 months on the bounce, and month 4 is a slow month, you don't need to change anything. You
Yeah.
don't need to change anything. So it should give confidence behind the message, and it should give confidence behind your work on a day to day, month to month, year on year. And it's actually then what we can, I say about setting standards and things that are controllable, but actually you set standards within the data that's provided as well. And that's what that's how you keep track of how people are tracking towards it. You see trends that you don't necessarily want to, especially in sales performance. When that activity does drop, well, the end number, the appointment number in our perspective, the value at the end of our product, well, that's going to drop with it. So it's an absolute non-negotiable for us, and we've got to be all over it. And actually, previous to, again, joining Centram, it wasn't probably something that I appreciated as much as I do now. We're a very analytical business, and we have to be, and that comes within our service and the transparency that we provide to the client. But
Mhm.
it's also critical in performance, because we're a performance organisation, as we said.
Yeah, absolutely. Live and die by the sword, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is good. And I think that is where it's very easy for that environment to get toxic and toxic quick. So culture is everything in that sense, and you do a good job. It's a good job of that. I think the interesting thing to do maybe on this series is maybe have you and one of the SDRs from the team, one of the senior SDRs from the team, to come on and
Yeah,
have a chat around that. Maybe a few of them
yeah,
would be quite good. For those who are interested, look out for that when it comes out.
Yeah.
What about challenges and common challenges? Kind of, we touched on quite a few of them already, but what are the common things you see day to day? And let's just talk about how you overcome those as a leader.
Yeah. So I think sometimes, yeah, again, it sort of references back to what I've said, but you know, you are dictated to. I know the team here really like the fact that they get to pitch and talk to different senior leaders from different organisations regarding different products. And that's part of um, the enjoyment of the role from an outbound perspective, that you are representing different customers at one time. But you can be dictated to by maybe a limitation within product, or maybe it's niche and maybe it only has a certain number of people that they can sell to, a number of organisations that they can sell to. But I think it's, as a leader, it's around making that exciting, because
Mm,
actually what the case is usually when it is a little bit more challenging, it is a bit more niche, the opportunities that you then do put forward to a client are even more valuable, because they know that they operate within a niche, but they are convinced and often right in saying that they have something that solves a challenge within that market. And
yeah,
it's, we need to be good at that, because actually a lot of people that do come to us are people that obviously struggle to break into a market where they know that their product fits. So it's our job to make sure that we have a framework and an angle in that provides them with opportunity. And what we talk about as a team quite regularly is, yeah, it's challenging. It might take us longer than others to book other customers, to book the number of appointments that we want. But actually, when we do, the opportunity and the appreciation and the value to the client is 2 times over. So it's about enjoying that chase. It's enjoying the hunt. It's not just a volume play. It's about sometimes really, really angling in on a small number or a small volume of prospects, and knowing that if you can book X percentage of them, that is of super, super value to our client.
100%.
So I think that is when we talk about overcoming those challenges, and there's loads of things that we do within a process. All the conversations that happen internally. As you said, we've got senior SDRs that are experienced in selling into different spaces, which has been incredibly valuable to me, because when I don't have the solution, which is often the case, and I'm sure the SDR that joins me on the next podcast will say, they call each other, they lean into each other, they have their own little think tanks that then come up with 4 or 5 different approaches that each of them may have tried, because they all have different approaches. And then we find one that hopefully works more often than not, and that is often the case. So I think the challenge is getting in sometimes and making sure that we can get into a conversation within a niche market. And how we overcome it is by enjoying it, celebrating it more, seeing the value of what it is to the client, and then also leveraging our own knowledge internally, where we've all sold and all operate within different markets for different products. There is a way in, you just got to find it.
Absolutely. There's always a door you can open.
Yes,
There's always
there is. Yeah, yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, thank you, Callum, for your insight. I think we could go on for hours, couldn't we? So maybe we'll do another session for those who are
Yeah.
interested from here. But let's just take some final thoughts then. So let's do the classic one piece of advice, Callum. So if you had to give a sales leader looking to boost their team's performance, what would it be?
Outsource, outsource your activity. No, it would be, because I think you learn a lot. I think, again, as I said earlier, and I don't want to keep going over the same things, but it's really enjoyable speaking to sales leaders or business owners, leaders, um, who have used our service for X amount of time, where we've spoken to hundreds of people over a long period, and going, right, what are the takeaways, what are the outcomes. So I think that's I would certainly encourage exploring it and having the conversation. But in terms of advice to leaders, um, I think it's, be really clear with your expectation. The standard piece that I mentioned earlier around high performance teams, setting a really clear standard and holding the team to that. Um, being clear in the communication that then follows, but then also make sure that you do take time out for the individual. I've really enjoyed managing large sales teams where the individual hasn't been maybe perceived as important as I should have done in the past, and actually moving over to Sentrama, where we've got a slightly smaller team, but a team of senior qualified, really good, strong, skilled SDRs. You have to value the individual more. And I think just understanding what makes people tick, being a people leader. Being a people leader is being a performance leader. If you can get the most out of your people and your talent, performance then follows. So take time for the individual.
Okay, nice. Take time for the individual. I'll note it down.
That's a
Um,
real good snippet, that is.
I love it. I love it. We all know about pro tools everywhere now.
Yeah.
Time for the individual. Okay, cool. So let's leave it there. I think we'll put some notes in the show notes. I know James, our content guy, will cover that off for us. But Callum, thank you for your time,
No, thanks, Robbie. It's been great.
and we'll speak to you again soon, mate. Cheers,
Yeah,
mate.
catch you later. Cheers.
Hey guys, really hope you found today's podcast interesting and full of business-to-business sales and marketing advice. If you like what you hear, please head over to our LinkedIn page for more free content. And, of course, feel free to connect with me, Robbie McGregor, for the latest news, advice, or even a quick friendly chat.